consisting of more than half water. The body would dissolve into a pool of common chemicals were it not for the scaffolding that keeps it contained, upright, and moving. Its genetic code and essential metabolism are held within its cells, the building blocks that stack together to form tissues, organs, and body systems. Cells combine into the bones that protect and shape the body, into the muscles that move those bones, and into the skin, hair, and nails that form a surprisingly tough defensive barrier. Together, your bones, muscles, and skin make up more than half your body weight. They take a beating in terms of cuts, breaks, and tears during a lifetime. Luckily, they're also adept at healing themselves and rebuilding to keep the body moving forward. In fact, constant use in the form of exercise makes both bones and muscles larger and stronger as your body adapts itself day to day to the stresses of your life. Are you interested to learn more? Well, you should be, because this is the first episode in our new series, An Essential Guide to Your Body and Brain. For today, we're going to talk about the framework. We're going to talk about bones, muscles, the skin, the cells. We're going to talk about all these things that I just included in the introduction. And now, without further ado, let's start our very first episode from our new series, An Essential Guide to Your Body and Brain. And today, we're going to start talking about the body, actually. And it is about the framework. We're going to talk about cells. We're going to talk about bones, the skin, and muscles. So don't go away. That's what we're going to do next. We're going to start talking about the cell. The human body is a bustling, complex, multicellular organism. To understand its functions, from a sneeze to the birth of a baby, one must understand its cells. Cells are the building blocks of the human body. The adult body contains 50 to 100 trillion cells in about 200 specialized forms. They range in size from the sperm, a few micrometers wide, to the egg, about 100 micrometers in diameter, the size of the period at the end of the sentence. Well, nerve cells take the prize for size, however, if you include the axon, which is the part of the nerve cells that conducts impulses. The neurons that run from the spine to the toes are more than 3 feet long. So what about cell structures? Human cells share basic ingredients and structures. All consist mainly of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Each has an outer boundary, the plasma membrane. Inside, the cell is divided into two regions, the cytoplasm and the nucleus. The cytoplasm contains fluid and a variety of organelles, which means little organs, that perform cell metabolism. The cytoplasm surrounds the nucleus, which is the largest organelle, that is the control center and the location of chromosomes, which are the genetic material and the code that shapes the body. So that is about the cells, but do we have the same cells from the moment we are born to the moment we die? Well, not exactly. That's what I'm going to tell you in Divide and Conquer. So don't go away, that's what we're going to talk about next. Well, you are not as old as you might think. Cells in most human tissues regularly die and get replaced. New cells arise through the process of mitosis, in which one cell splits into two genetically identical daughter cells in an amazing dance of thread-like chromosomes. According to some scientists, the average age of human cells is somewhere under 10 years. Those in tough neighborhoods, like the cells that line the hard-working human gut, have a lifespan measured in days. The entire liver turns over every year or so. Can you imagine that? So you are not as old as you might think. However, and obviously you knew there was a however coming, right? You don't feel perpetually young for several reasons. Some cells, for instance, remain unchanged from birth. These include most of the cells of the cortex, which is the thinking portion of the brain, and most of the muscle cells that make up the heart. And the genes in the center of each cell pick up damage over time. mutations handed down to daughter cells when genes are copied during cell division. So what prompts a cell to divide? Biologists don't know for sure. Cell size might be one trigger. When a cell reaches a certain ratio of surface area to volume, when it gets fat, chemical signals might prompt division. Normal cells also stop dividing when they begin to touch each other. Scientists are eager to decipher the signals that turn cell division on and off, since cancer cells notoriously ignore these normal controls. So since we talked about cancer, and that is definitely closely related to this part of divide and conquer with cells, so what can go wrong? That's what we're going to talk about next. Don't go away. We're going to talk about cancers. Now, cancer is a class of diseases marked by the uncontrolled growth of cells. Cancers have increasingly dominated the mortality statistics and might be the defining plague of our generation. Cells become cancerous as a result of mutations, typically damage to the genes that control cell division and growth. Because genetic damage accumulates over time, cancer becomes increasingly common with age. Hereditary factors can play a part, while exposure to carcinogens like radiation or cigarette smoke can also cause mutations. Cancerous or malignant cells grow into abnormal tissues called tumors, masses that may spread to multiple parts of the body. Almost any kind of cell can become cancerous, although cancers vary wildly in their severity. For example, pancreatic cancer and liver cancer are among the most deadly. Doctors attack cancer with a variety of weapons, from surgery to chemotherapy to radiation. Researchers are putting increased efforts into targeting the molecular processes for each kind of cancer in the hope of one day pulling up the disease by its genetic roots. And this is in brief about cancer, but later this week we're going to have an in-depth episode about cancer. It is our very short introduction to cancer. And we're going to talk about a lot more if you're interested to learn more. So tune in by the end of this week to learn more about cancer. But now let's get back to our episode and our series, An Essential Guide to Your Body and Brain. So that was everything I wanted to share with you about cells. I hope you learned something about cells that you didn't know about before. But that's not everything. We're still going to talk about the framework, and cells is just one part of it. We're going to talk about bones next. The living skeleton is a powerful structure composed of bones, joints, cartilage, and ligaments. It supports the body, gives it shape, and anchors the muscles. The skeleton's 206 bones not only protect internal organs, but also manufacture blood cells and store mineral salts such as calcium and phosphorus, which the body needs for healthy bone and muscle function. The skeleton's protective role can be seen in the 12 pairs of ribs that curve around the chest cavity and shelter the heart, lungs, and organs of the upper abdomen. The spine, which protects the delicate spinal cord, the pelvis, which holds the uterus and bladder, and the skull, which safeguards the brain. The spine provides the body with some flexibility, but it also allows us to stand tall and to hold our hefty heads high. The brain and skull together weigh approximately 15 pounds or 6.8 kilograms. Although bones are relatively light, the average adult skeleton weighs about 20 pounds or 9 kilograms. They can withstand forces with the strength of cast iron. When a person walks, for instance, each foot strikes the ground with a force of about 3 times that of his or her weight. Someone who weighs, say, 150 pounds or 68 kilograms, his or her lower limbs are subjected to a walloping 450 pounds of force, or 204 kilograms of force. Interesting, no? Interesting to learn about these things that we take for granted, our bodies. And later on in the series, you will learn amazing things about what the body, and especially what the brain, can do and how they do it. But now let's continue talking about bones, and we'll talk about multitasking when it comes to bones. And that's coming next. Don't go away. As living organs, bones hum with activity. Inside them, bone marrow creates blood cells. Outside, competing cells continually build and break down bone in a process known as remodeling. Calcium from old bone cells is released into the blood, where it can be used again to make new bone. Bones consist of two kinds of tissue: compact bone, which forms the hard outer layer, and spongy bone, a lacy tissue in the interior. The gel-like marrow is found in the gaps of some spongy bone, such as in the long bones of the arms and legs. Red marrow is the body's blood cell factory. It churns out more than 100 billion new blood cells every day. Bones are typically classified by shape. Flat bones shield the brain and the organs in the chest cavity and pelvis. Long bones are powerful, weight-bearing bones, chiefly those of the arms and legs, the clavicles, and those of the hands and feet. Short bones are small and cube-like. They are found in the wrists and ankles. Irregular bones, such as the vertebrae, come in a variety of shapes and usually have projections to which muscles, tendons, and ligaments can attach. Sesamoids are short bones that develop in tendons that experience considerable friction and stress, such as in the palms and in the soles. Kneecaps, for example, are sesamoid bones. So how do we keep the bones healthy? How do we build strong bones? That's what we're going to talk about next, so don't go away. Starting at about age 30, the body loses bone more quickly than it makes bone. To keep your skeleton strong into old age, you can adopt a few basic habits. Include lots of calcium in your diet. Dairy products, almonds, and leafy greens such as kale and broccoli are good sources of this mineral. What else can you do? You can take in vitamin D. Fortified milk, egg yolks, and oily fish are good sources. Sunlight on bare skin prompts the body to make its own vitamin D, though this phenomenon decreases with age. And also, you will need to weigh the benefits of bone building against the costs of possible skin cancers, so you have to be careful about that. It's good to expose your skin to the sun, but not for prolonged periods, because that may cause other, more serious problems. So, we talked about calcium, we talked about vitamin D. What else can we do to build strong bones? Well, engage in regular weight-bearing exercise, such as walking, climbing stairs, or playing tennis. This kind of activity builds bones. And finally, avoid smoking cigarettes and drinking to excess. Along with all their other harmful effects, these bad habits decrease bone density. So, we talked about bones, we talked about how to keep bones healthy, but how are these bones connected to each other? We'll talk about these connections next, so don't go away. Without joints, those crossroads of the human framework, the body would be an immobile prison. There are more than 400 joints, also known as articulations, in the body. Muscles span joints by crossing from one bone to another. Cords, called tendons, join muscles to bones, which move when the muscles contract. Ligaments, which are bands of strong tissue, support the bones around a joint. And resilient cartilage cushions the bone's ends and helps joints function smoothly. So let's talk about the knee as an example, actually as a very good example. The knee is an example of both the marvelous engineering of joints and their vulnerability. The most complex joint in the body. It takes a pounding as the hinge between two substantial leg bones, the femur and the tibia. Multiple pads of cartilage cushion it, and ligaments run along the sides and center to stabilize it. A knee injury can happen quickly, as when a sudden change of direction tears the anterior cruciate ligament, or the ACL for short. Or it may occur over a lifetime, as when osteoarthritis erodes the protective cartilage. Irreversible damage may lead to one of the most common operations performed in the United States, which is called knee arthroplasty or knee replacement. So we talked about connections. What can go wrong? Well, there's arthritis. And that's what we're going to talk about next, so don't go away. Arthritis is a general term for more than 100 different types of inflammatory or degenerative diseases that damage the joints. To varying degrees, these diseases share similar symptoms, which are pain, joint stiffness, and swelling. Arthritis can appear as the side effect of a number of illnesses, or it can take the form of an autoimmune disorder. That means when the immune system attacks its own tissue, as with rheumatoid arthritis. But osteoarthritis, attributed to normal wear and tear, is its most common form. In osteoarthritis, articular cartilage, which occurs in joints where bone meets another bone, breaks down and new tissue does not replace it. Bones begin to grind directly against one another, eventually wearing down the cartilage and forming bony spurs where the exposed tissue has thickened. Today, arthritis is among the world's most common diseases, and it may also be one of the oldest. Remains of skeletons dating to the Ice Age bear traces of joint damage that resembles osteoarthritis. So, we talked about the bones, the connections, and we talked about what can go wrong. Now let's move to the part that you love the most, the muscles. That's what we're going to talk about next, so don't go away. So, the muscles, everybody likes to have, I'm not going to say big muscles because not everybody loves that, but everybody likes to keep a good shape, and you can achieve that with building some muscle. So what is the muscle? It makes up more than half the body's mass. Muscles are the body's movers, shakers, and stabilizers. Muscles power the body's internal operating systems as well as its moving parts. Without muscles, the body could not breathe air or digest food. Without muscles, blood could not circulate from the heart in the core of the body out through the limbs and back again. Every body movement, whether voluntary or not, occurs through the work of muscles. So, what types of muscles do we have? The human body contains 3 kinds of muscles: skeletal muscles, smooth muscles, and cardiac muscles. Each muscle type performs a different job. Skeletal muscles, also known as striated muscles because of their striped appearance, make up the bulk of the body and come in various sizes and shapes. They move voluntarily. A person can control their operation. Smooth muscles occur in organs and blood vessels. They contract and relax involuntarily, and they motivate the essential life systems. Cardiac muscle, the muscle in the heart, is also involuntary. From before birth until the moment of death, cardiac muscle cells contract and relax with a rhythm embedded in their cells, creating the pulsing force that circulates blood through the heart. So what about exercise? Is it good for you? Which is fitter, the tortoise or the hare? You all know the story of the tortoise and the hare. But which is fitter, do you think? There's no dispute that exercise is good for you. It builds strength, trims fat, and improves the functioning of heart and lungs, in addition to a host of other benefits. But which is better? Long bouts of lower-level exertion, such as walking, or short stints of intense exercise, such as running or playing tennis? The answer appears to be both. Walking seems to be as effective as running when it comes to improving aerobic function and keeping blood sugar steady, while running appears to burn off more fat. Short bursts of intense exercise lasting under 10 minutes seem to work as well as longer, steadier sessions do. But most researchers still agree that you should get at least 150 minutes of some kind of exercise each week. Whether fast or slow, intense or easy, it's up to you. So it is not about being the tortoise or the hare. It's just about being active. That's the key. And now we'll talk more about smooth muscles and cardiac muscles, but that's coming next, so don't go away. Most of your body's inside action is propelled by the unseen and involuntary efforts of smooth muscles. Smooth muscle is at work, for example, in the walls of blood vessels, in the walls of hollow organs such as the stomach, the intestines, and the bladder, in the airways leading into the lungs, and inside the iris of the eye. Smooth muscle gets its name from the sleek surfaces of its muscle fibers, compared with the striped appearance of skeletal muscle fibers. The esophagus, the tube that sends food down into the stomach after a person swallows, is composed of layers of smooth muscle. The mechanical force of these muscle groups is so strong that food still continues its march toward the stomach even if a person is standing on his head. And when it comes to cardiac muscle, well, there are similarities. Like smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, the muscle that makes up the heart, operates involuntarily. Like skeletal muscle, however, it is striated, with dark bands of color visible in the cells. Cardiac muscle cells are short and squat. They connect to one another with a special bonding design that makes the heart a dense, strong organ and allows tiny electrochemical impulses to pass rapidly from cell to cell. A group of special cardiac muscle cells serve as the heart's internal pacemaker. These cells never rest. With a constant rhythm of contraction and relaxation, they generate the electrochemical impulses that maintain the steady lub-dub of the heartbeat. And finally, let's talk a little more about the skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles' striated tissue forms distinct masses, each one a muscle. As the name suggests, skeletal muscles usually attach to bones. This type of muscle works voluntarily, and its actions, coordinated sequences of contracting and relaxing, move the bones at their joints. Tendons attach muscles to bones. A muscle generally is attached at one end to a fixed bone, then it crosses over a joint and attaches to the bone that it moves. When the muscle contracts, the tendon transfers the force to the bone and causes it to move around the joint. For every muscle group that contracts, an opposite muscle group relaxes. And remember, muscles only pull, they never push. So that was about the muscles, and we still have one more thing to talk about to complete our episode about the framework, about our body's framework, and that has to do with the skin, which is one of the most important organs in our body. So that's coming next. Don't go away. The body's largest organ is worn on the outside for all to see, weighing about 8 pounds or 3.6 kilograms and covering up to 22 square feet or 2 square meters. If ghoulishly spread out, the skin joins the hair and nails to form the integumentary system, and this fancy word comes from Latin integumentum, which means covering. This system has an essential role in protecting, healing, and regulating the body. So let's talk about the epidermis. Beauty may be only skin deep, but how deep is that? The thinnest skin, from 0.004 to 0.006 inch or 0.010 to 0.015 centimeters, is found on the eyelids, while the thickest, which is about 0.18 inches or 0.46 centimeters, is on the palms and heels. That narrow expanse contains two kinds of tissue. The moisture-proof epidermis is the protective outermost layer. Among other things, it contains melanocytes. These cells make the radiation-absorbing pigment melanin, which gives skin its color and protects it from the sun's ultraviolet rays. The epidermis is regularly refreshed, shedding millions of old skin cells daily as fresh cells rise to the surface. So what about the dermis, which is just beneath the epidermis? So just beneath the epidermis is what we call the dermis. It's a tough sheath of connective tissue that makes up the bulk of the skin. The dermis provides support and gives the skin strength and suppleness. The dermis is often referred to as the true skin because unlike the continually renewing epidermis, it stays the same throughout life. The dermis contains blood and lymph vessels, nerve endings, hair follicles, sweat and sebaceous glands, and the proteins collagen and elastin. Sensory receptors in the dermis detect pressure, vibration, and light touch. Bare nerve endings sense painful stimuli such as extreme heat and cold. So the skin is obviously the body armor. Skin is an essential but little appreciated member of the immune system. As a physical barrier, it blocks invading pathogens. Because it is water resistant, yet also an excreter of wastes and sweat, it also helps to keep body fluids imbalanced and to regulate temperature. The skin cushions the organs and tissues against injury, and by detecting touch, pain, pressure, and degrees of temperature, it tells the body about the world. To protect the human fortress, skin employs multiple defenses. Most would-be invaders never get past the acid mantle of sweat and sebum that coats the skin and contains antibacterial and antifungal substances, including human defensin, which is a protein that literally punches holes in bacteria. And now let's talk about the healing part of the skin. Because skin forms such a vital barrier, its healing process is fast and thorough. When scratched or scraped, the epidermis speeds up cell replacement. New cells surround the wound and migrate in sheets across it. The healing process for penetrating wounds is more complex. Blood clots form to wall in the injured area, and inflammation brings infection-fighting white blood cells to the wound. In the dermis, cells called fibroblasts produce growth factors and collagen fibers to create new tissue. Within days or weeks, the skin rebuilds. So that was about the skin. Very interesting, right? Maybe you know about these things, maybe you don't. But I'm telling you essential things you need to know about your body. And today we're talking about the framework. Remember, we talked about cells, we talked about bones, muscles, and now we're talking about the skin. And now, how can we keep the skin healthy? That's what we're going to talk about next, so don't go away. Well, first, let's talk about sunlight. Sunlight gives life to the world, which is good for you, of course. Exposure to the sun helps to regulate circadian rhythms and improves your mood. Sunlight on skin helps the body make vitamin D, which strengthens your bones. But saying that, you should know that sunlight is also bad for you. Within the spectrum are high-frequency ultraviolet rays, or what we call UV rays, that's ultraviolet, which penetrate skin cells and can cause gene mutations leading to skin cancer. The most dangerous form of skin cancer, melanoma, kills thousands of people each year. Now, when it comes to sun versus shade, most doctors vote for shade as they believe that the risk of skin cancer outweighs the benefits of sun exposure. Wearing long sleeves and applying a sunblock of 15 SPF or more are easy ways to protect the skin. Physicians estimate that people who regularly use sunblock at that level in their first 18 years reduce the risk of non-melanoma cancers by almost 80%. So, it is not about not exposing yourself to the sun or overexposing yourself to the sun. The best thing in the world is to find the right balance between being under the sun and being in the shade. So that was everything I wanted to share with you in today's episode. Remember, we talked about cells, we talked about bones, we talked about muscles, different types of muscles, different functions of bones. We talked about the connections between bones, the voluntary, the involuntary muscles, and finally, we talked about the skin, which is the body armor that we have, the natural body armor that we have. With that, we come to the end of today's episode, the first episode in our series, An Essential Guide to Your Body and Brain. Next time, we're going to talk about our brains, and we're going to talk about a very special thing that has to do with the learning brain. With that being said, this is your host, Danny. I would like to thank you very much for listening. I will see you next time.